superficial wife. The four of them went on a week-long trip to Corfu. By four, I mean my wife Kirsty and her three best friends from school, Laura, Jane, and Shauna. They were inseparable and tried to take a couple of short weekend vacations together every year. I didn't mind, as I got a couple weekends of golf in return. The week-long trip was unusual, but the trip was hot and cheaper than some of their weekend getaways. With a short notice of vacation time, they would fly out on Monday and return the following Sunday. That left me, Mark, in charge of our 15-year-old son Jake and 8-year-old Chloe. That's not to say I can't cook, but Kirsty had left pre-prepared meals for the week, so God forbid I didn't poison the kids. The week started well, thanks to the help of both pairs of parents. I managed to work, run to school, attend sports and dance classes. I was doing pretty well at being a domestic goddess, thanks in part to Kirsty's instructions for the washing machine. Kirsty called a few times, mostly to check I hadn't done any permanent damage, but also to remind the kids that she missed them and loved us all. So we survived the week, and I was with John and Tony, Shauna, and Jane's husbands, waiting for the girls at the airport. Laura was still single. The kids stayed at home, buried in their gadgets, and I was at the stage where I trusted Jake to look after Chloe for a short time. I watched Shauna and Jane drag themselves through the arrival hall looking tired. Laura soon followed, but Kirsty was nowhere to be seen. The other girls' greetings seemed a little unsure as I was still searching for her. Laura asked if I'd received a letter from Kirsty. I had no idea what she was talking about. The girls looked at each other warily when Laura said that Kirsty had sent a letter that I was supposed to read, which explained why Kirsty hadn't flown home. I immediately thought she must have been ill or had an accident and asked if she was all right. I was assured that she was fine, but that she had decided to stay with friends for a couple days. I never received any coherent answers to my subsequent barrage of questions. I left the airport feeling both concerned and humiliated. Back home, I impatiently turned on my computer, and it turned out that an email had arrived right after I left for the airport. It contained no more than what Laura had said, only that she had met up with friends, she had an opportunity to take a short boat trip, and she was staying a few days to make it happen. Hoped we were doing well and that the kids were used to my cooking, and at the end she wrote that she loved us and would be home soon. I couldn't understand why there was no call to mention the extra stay, and then I realized she hadn't called at all the last couple of days. And what kind of friends are those? I couldn't think of who that could be. I called her cell phone, but the call went to voicemail, so my message was short and concise. Try to pick up the phone. She's probably a floater with no connection, but I had a very unsettling feeling. I tried calling again, but there was still no answer. Then I started calling 3 of her friends. They must have known something. Shauna's husband, John, said I should come to their house at 9 o'clock at night. When I arrived, all the other girls and Tony were there, and the situation seemed tense. John started the conversation. Mark needs to know what happened. Spill it out, Shauna. The last night, we met a few guys at a pool party at the harbor with some guys and went to their house for a drink. It was a simple party. Kirsty got talking to the owner of the house, a guy called Samuel. Tony interrupted. According to the version Jane told me, there was more to it than that. Kissing and cuddling, they were all having a great time on some rich bastard's yacht. Shauna looked at Jane, but it was Laura who spoke. It wasn't like that. A couple guys tried to hit on us, but we told them off, and when they got too persistent, we left. Well, we left, but Kirsty stayed. Shit, I said, though I didn't realize it. I tried to convince her to come with us, but she was determined to stay. Shauna intervened. They weren't doing anything, Mark, just talking. I guess she didn't come back to the room with you. The silence told me the answer. She came back at lunchtime today and announced she was staying for a few days, took her things and left. We all yelled and screamed at her, but she was determined to leave. We don't understand what happened to her, but we didn't discourage her. So she stayed there with some millionaire? I guess so, was the most helpful answer I got. More was said, but we kept going in circles. The guys were furious while I was completely bewildered. It was so unlike her that it just didn't make sense. I got home on autopilot, dealt with the kids and collapsed into bed, exhausted, but unable to sleep. My world had collapsed. The next morning I woke up late and frantically ran around the house trying to get the kids ready, make lunches and get them both to school. Being late for work, I missed the start of a client meeting, much to the displeasure of my manager. I still hadn't heard from Kirsty. Work had been hectic all day, and I was late picking up Chloe. Luckily, Shauna, Jane, and their kids were in the school yard with her. They saw how excited I was and offered their help for the rest of the week. They asked about Kirsty's letter, and I told them how little it said. I was still in complete ignorance. Monday evening, I finally got a call from Kirsty. She started apologizing for not calling, saying she didn't have a signal. Without taking a breath, she talked about the opportunity to go on a sea voyage with friends and how the opportunity was too good to pass up. I let her continue and then said, "Will you stay with Samuel on his yacht then?" The silence was deafening. "Mark, it's not what you think. I think you live with a millionaire. You left your husband. You humiliated me in front of our friends, and you didn't have the decency to keep in touch with your children. It's just a few days. I'll be back on Thursday. Don't worry about coming back at all." I hung up. What kind of a complete fool is this? The phone rang several times, but I ignored it. A text came through. "Sorry, first flight tomorrow at 3 p.m. We need to talk. Tell the kids I love them." My anger reached new heights. We need to talk and tell the kids I love them, after she ignored them. She must be kidding. The next day, I asked her parents to watch the kids. They were shocked by her action, but asked me to hear her side of the story before deciding anything. The kids also started asking questions. I wasn't going to pick her up, and she dragged her suitcase through the door at 8 p.m. I said nothing and stared at her in silence. "I'm sorry, Mark. I wasn't thinking. It was an opportunity to take a break from everything, and I took it. I just didn't think about how it would look. You must think I'm an idiot. You stayed on his yacht even though the others begged you to go back to the hotel with them. He was nice. We just talked." "Back off, Kirsty. You don't leave your family to just talk to someone nice. All 3 days you've been just talking?" "Mostly, yes, but I wasn't in love with him." "I don't believe you, and even if you didn't, you still left me for another man." "I didn't leave you. It's just that I had the freedom to travel, and there were other people there. Samuel is a real gentleman, a really generous host, and a good listener. So I'm not listening to you." "No, that's not it. You're listening. But this is a kind of escape from our normal life, as if I can choose anything and be free. Our lives have gotten a little stale, a little, boring." "You've got to be kidding. This is the life you wanted. Kids and a house. You're the reason we stopped traveling and gave up most of our activities. You're the one who wanted a bigger house and to save up money. The kids were too young to travel. There was no way to get off work. There was always some excuse. Is it really about that? Or is it because you had a chance to sleep with a millionaire?" "I don't know, Mark. It just felt different there. We got on so well, and I think we developed a connection." "It's amazing. Are you in love with him, or is it just lust? Oh, damn it. I didn't make love to him." I noticed the wording of her comment. "You didn't make love to him, but slept with him, I suppose." She finally nodded with tears in her eyes. "How charming. And did you kiss, caress?" Another nod and tears again. I had to leave before my head burst. "You need to see your kids. They're at their mom's. I hope you can explain to them better what you're up to before I do." I ran out, hearing Kirsty calling my name behind me. I was in the pub for an hour before Tony found me. He got himself a beer and sat down next to me. "Sorry, mate. There's a whole hunt for you. Kirsty's called Laura, and they're looking for you." He made a couple of calls to say he'd found me. John arrived shortly after. If it's any consolation, the girls are furious with her too. Her actions have thrown them into the shit. We are not happy with our wives and still ask questions and compare answers to see if there is more to it. I asked if there was something new, but they thought there wasn't. "What are you going to do?" "I have no idea. She seems to be in love with the asshole and has dissolved into some romantic fantasy." That's when my phone rang. "Please come home. We need to talk." "No, like you earlier. I don't want to go back," I answered. It rang again, and I turned it off. Kirsty. It was past midnight when Tony helped Mark back into the house. I had never seen him so drunk. I tried to help, but Mark looked at me with absolute contempt. Tony managed to get him into bed, and he immediately fell asleep. I had barely started to thank Tony for his help when he interrupted me. "What are you doing to him, Kirsty? The fact that you didn't come back is bad enough, but now he thinks you're in love with some guy. He deserves better. It's just cruel. Figure out what you want and stop torturing him with your other boyfriend." With those words, Tony ran off. I looked at Mark and got really upset. Tony's right. He didn't deserve this. I'm selfish. He barely moved as I undressed him and put him to bed, leaving a basin, a glass of water, and 2 aspirin tablets next to him. I was so confused. Mark is such a good man and a great father, and I had hurt him. I still love him, and I can't explain my actions with Samuel. Maybe because Samuel only looked at me and talked to me and not Kirsty, the wife or mom, he made me feel special. Anyway, I need to get over all this and be a good wife and mother again. That's when I got the text message. "Are you okay?" It was from Samuel, and I ignored it. The truth was that I was far from okay. I hurt the people I love. Besides Mark, I have to make it up to Jake and Chloe. They knew something was wrong. Then to my girlfriends, who I put in an awkward situation. The looks of disappointment I got from my mom and dad when I came to pick up the kids were devastating. The next morning, I tried to talk to Mark, but he wasn't interested and seemed annoyed that I saw him drunk. His only words were, "Don't worry, it won't happen again." He left for work looking frazzled, and I started getting the kids ready for school. That was the beginning of trying to get back to normal. Over the next few days, I received more and more texts from Samuel, worrying and asking if I was okay. I resisted the urge to answer them. Days passed, and I still couldn't get through to Mark. We talked only business, and for the sake of the kids, we tried to keep up a pleasant facade, but it was awful. I started crying again when the phone rang. I answered it without looking. It was Samuel. When he heard how things were and how upset I was, I could barely keep him from coming to get me. I repeated the conversation I had the day I returned, about how much I loved my husband and children, and that I needed to get back to them. Then explained all the pain we had caused them. He said he was lonely and that he missed me. I felt the same way, even though I live in a house full of people. He asked if he could see me to make sure I was okay. I refused, but he kept insisting, saying he would book a local hotel and begged to see me. Samuel kept writing and calling, and eventually, with the kids at school and Mark at work, I went to see him for lunch. He hadn't changed and was still just as worried about me. It was a relief to have someone I could talk to. We had a casual conversation, and for the first time in weeks I felt better. I arranged to see him the following week. The more distant Mark became, the closer Samuel became. He was so caring and concerned, apologizing for the trouble he had caused me. It made me feel so good to see him. He felt like my only friend. On the 4th meal, I went to his hotel room and we made love for the first time. I was overwhelmed with emotion. The feeling was amazing. Not that Samuel was better than Mark, but it was new and exciting. Plus, I hadn't had love since the girls left, which made the feeling even more intense. Samuel, on the other hand, was thrilled and called being with me an honor for him. Afterwards, we cuddled and made love again. But not like with Mark. I felt free to open up. I got home late and found Mark asleep in Chloe's room on a blanket. They had both fallen asleep while he was reading her a bedtime story. I felt absolutely horrified. I gently woke him up and put him in my bed, but he was fast asleep again. I crawled under the covers next to him and cried until I fell asleep. I wanted so badly to take care of Mark, but I thought I had fallen in love with Samuel. It was all so confusing, and I was faced with the worst dilemma. I tried to think about what would be best for Mark. If I really love him, isn't it better to just walk away? Was I trying to protect Mark, or was I just being cowardly? I missed being able to ask him for advice. He always knows the right thing to do. I arranged to meet Samuel again, this time for dinner, and I wanted to make it special. The kids were at my mom's, and Mark was away with the guys for a sleepover. I found my little black dress, stiletto shoes, and bought new stockings. Dinner was lovely. We talked about running away and a possible divorce. He has money, so it's a no-brainer, and he can help with lawyers about custody. When I told him I couldn't leave because of the kids in school, he immediately offered to find a place nearby so we could be together. The lovemaking was amazing. Samuel wasn't eager to get my dress off quickly. He loved my underwear and stockings. It was an absolute escape from my normal and now depressed life. I got home at midnight and was horrified to see Mark's car in the driveway. When I got in, he was holding a stocking bag in his hand. Was it for him? I couldn't deny it and nodded through my tears. So it's hardly platonic. You dress for love. So nice for him, you've never offered me. Let's see. You've always said that I should be enough of you without fancy makeup and lingerie, and that you should feel comfortable. So he gets more out of you than I ever did. I couldn't think of what to say in response, having no idea why I didn't do this for Mark. Maybe because of the power or control in the marriage, or the fact that I'm a wife and mom, not a mistress. Do you think our whole marriage is boring or just our sex life? Do you do things with him that you wouldn't do with me? It's not like that, Mark. I can't explain it. You're not boring in any way. I really couldn't explain it. Mark always wanted to be more sexually adventurous, but I held back and rejected what he offered. That's the difference. I'm comfortable with me and he's a turn-on. Now you're making an effort, but not for us. How much effort did you put in for flirting and dinners? I didn't like the truth in his words. It seemed so smug and silly now, because if I had made more effort, maybe I wouldn't be looking for another. There wasn't much difference between Mark and Samuel. The difference was me and how I acted around them. Stammering, I apologized and ran to the bedroom, locking the door. I expected Mark to kick it open and throw me out, but he didn't. This is a complete disaster. In a panic, I called Samuel. He, after making sure I was safe, suggested I go to his place. I decided that my life was now purgatory, and Samuel was my only way out. The next morning, I found Mark in the kitchen, sleeping in the spare room. I'm sorry, Mark. I ruined us and I can't fix it. I think we should try to separate. I need time to find myself, to figure out what I need. Mark saw right through me. This is about him, isn't it? You're going to him. All this time you've been in contact with him? I sighed. Yes, for quite some time now. I need to sort out my feelings for him and for you. For both of you. Yeah, but you'll be figuring that out in his bed, so it's a done deal. It's not like that. I love you, but I messed up and I'm really confused about everything. All the emotions. I need to see if everything with him is real. Well, you can tell the kids. I don't know how to explain your actions. I'll tell them it's a short vacation. Don't be stupid. They'll expect you to come back. But I might actually come back. Mark looked at me incredulously. What makes you think it's up to you? Absolutely not. I want you to leave tomorrow and never come back. What about the kids in school? Seriously? You ruin our lives and decide that's what's important now, that I'll figure something out as usual and you'll blame it on another party. Go find yourself. Chances are you'll find yourself on the end of it. I was distraught. It never occurred to me that Mark would take the decision out of my hands. In parting, he said, "Tell the truth to your family and friends, I won't lie for you." I left the next day. Packing was awful. It felt wrong, like a mistake, but I had burned my bridges with Mark and Samuel was so excited that I was going to see him. I looked around the house one last time. Mark is right. His idea was mine and I love this house, but even if I do get it back in the divorce, I've ruined our happy home. To the kids, I told them it was a trial separation, but it didn't come as a shock. They knew something was up. Telling Mom and Dad was much harder. Mom just cried and begged me not to do it, while Dad could barely look at me, shaking his head. I went to Samuel's hotel. Usually being with him made me feel better, but not this time. We stayed there for a couple days before he suggested I leave. For a couple weeks, we went back to his yacht in Corfu. Love was wonderful, but I missed the kids and home. I didn't sleep well, and of course I felt guilty. Often wondered what Mark was doing and how he was coping with everything. We were making plans for my divorce. Samuel was dealing with the lawyers who had contacted Mark, and we had found a fancy apartment near the school to rent until the divorce and the house were resolved. I tried calling my girlfriends, but they weren't interested. Jane and Shauna were still on shaky ground with their husbands and were not interested in meeting Samuel or socializing. The bottom line was summed up by Shauna. We're going to support Mark and the kids, and if you're not in the group for a while, it's better. I was furious. They are my friends for life, not Mark. Laura, my best friend, was even worse. She couldn't accept that I had abandoned a man like Mark. I was very angry. When the kids mentioned the next barbecue at the neighbors, I insisted to Samuel that we go there, because I had just as much right to be there as Mark did. When we arrived, everyone was already there, including Mark and the kids. Jane immediately asked us to leave. "What a friend you are! I broke up with Mark, not everyone else." Jane didn't waste any time and replied sharply, "Maybe, Kirsty. But do you really want to rub your family's nose in the fact that you left them and now you've come here with your new boyfriend?" Samuel tried to drag me away. Mark and most of the others just looked perplexed. It was Jake who brought me to my senses. "Just go away, Mom. You're upsetting Chloe." I turned around in horror and saw Chloe crying and then running into Mark's lap, burying her little face in his chest. Everyone else stared at me and I let Samuel lead me away. I was so upset, I felt like I was losing everyone, not just Mark. Mark. She wasted no time and filed for divorce. I was worried I was going to lose my children and friends. Jesus, I would be one of the weekend dads, slowly losing touch with the kids, desperate to find something to entertain them, anything to take them to their dreary apartment. I'd heard all these horror stories, and her new man had enough money to legally bury me and impress the kids. I was terrified to hear about the kids' first trip on his fucking yacht. Luckily, Tony and John turned out to be great friends, and to my surprise, Laura, Shauna, and Jane were fantastic, helping with childcare, even coming over with food and checking to make sure I was okay. The divorce was progressing. Financially, it looked like everything would be easily split in half, but the stumbling block was the children. Kirsty was counting on primary custody and the right to live with them in our house. They were happy to buy it back from me. Money was no problem for her new man. His lawyers were so arrogant that they expected me to accept what they gave me and still be grateful. That all changed when my lawyer pointed out that Kirsty had actually abandoned the children for the duration of her extended vacation, then abandoned them again, sailing away with Samuel for a few weeks on his yacht. Her own lawyers tried to argue that she knew the children were being cared for. My attorney agreed, adding, they were definitely being cared for by their primary caregiver and the only constant presence in their lives. Moreover, Jake insists he wants to live with his father, and Chloe insists she wants to stay with Jake. I didn't make the kids aware of this, but I was very proud of the way Jake looked after Chloe during this whole sad process, tried to shield them from the worst of it, but couldn't fully protect them. They spent a lot of time with Tony and John's children, which was very rewarding for them. Tony's house has a granny annex where we often slept overnight. The kids always had a great time. The routine and simplicity of close friends helped a lot. His lawyers must have been worried because the next suggestion was joint custody. I considered seeking sole custody through the courts, but that was risky, and it would be better for the children if we could negotiate a compromise. In the end, we agreed that the kids would stay with me half the week. I would pick them up Wednesday through Friday afternoons and keep them at my house for the weekend if it was mine. I also insisted that we could each attend school and sporting events with them. Kirsty had never been interested in that, but I knew it would give me more access, and I liked being involved. The stumbling block was the house. I refused their offer to buy my part of it and insisted on selling it. I think Samuel was happy with that, but I knew it would upset Kirsty, which was a shame. No, really, honestly. I wasn't worried about where to live as Tony had offered us for minimal rent, the use of the annex for as long as we wanted. The fee was much less than our previous mortgage, and I figured I could use the money for other things until we decided on a permanent place to live. On the day we were due to sign the divorce papers, Kirsty came to see me. She was reminiscing about past times and how good we had been together, and I suggested that it wouldn't help either of us. Then, out of the blue, she said, "Maybe we shouldn't do this. I lost my temper. You're the one who gave up on our marriage and rushed into a divorce. And now you're not sure. Are you out of your mind?" "Maybe I am. I left because I thought you would never forgive my actions. I made a mistake and just kept digging a deeper hole." "What's the matter? Isn't everything roses with the new man?" "He's not you, and I miss us and our life together." The thought of a happy life with Kirsty flashed before me, including all the things we had planned and talked about. But it wasn't realistic. She wasn't what I had envisioned. Superficial is the word that popped into my head. "Just sign the papers and leave, Kirsty." I was back in the pub to celebrate the divorce with the lads when John said, We're happy to kick your ass, but maybe we can do something more constructive. What do you want out of life? You know, in a broader perspective. The meaning of life and all that. For John, it was very profound. I had no idea, but it dawned on me that I might have options, ambitions, doing something I love. Of course, the priority is the kids, but maybe I could do something else besides just surviving. On the days when the kids weren't with me, I had free time. I got back into biking, jogging, and hiking and started feeling better. Being dumped for another man was a major blow to my ego. The fitness classes naturally led to some weight loss, which I enjoyed, and partly brought my confidence back. The kids even started participating in some of these classes. Shauna tried to get me to start dating, but I wasn't ready and definitely felt self-conscious. I was afraid to start from scratch with someone new. Shauna and Jane often took us out to dinner with their families, and Laura brought us food every Thursday. The kids were grateful, and I managed most of the chores around the house, but cooking was something new to me, and yet I was getting better, little by little. I asked Jane why they were all so nice to me. After all, they were Kirsty's friends, not mine. She laughed. The great thing about you, Mark, is that you don't even realize how much people like you. You've always been there for us and our kids without a second thought, and we just repay you. I was indeed touched and blushed like an embarrassed teenager. I started organizing weekend trips with the kids, lots of sports and outdoor activities. They loved it, I did too. We often went with other families and Laura. When Kirsty had kids, I went on big hikes and trips, went to the mountains. I had a renewed interest and got back in touch with some old friends I used to rock climb with and got back into it as well. It was great to meet up with them again. We went straight back to old friendships that I had missed when marriage and kids came along. Living in the annex meant I needed to do fewer repairs, and I even had some spare money. I saved it up and went on a trip to the Andes with the kids in the summer, including a trip to Machu Picchu. They loved it, and we started planning our next trip, probably to the Alps. My climbing buddies were considering options there as well. After that, things got a bit weird. I was sure Laura started to flirt with me a bit, and Kirsty was increasingly ooting Rado at every handover of the kids. Kirsty. The kids called from vacation and were so excited that Jake even overcame his usual teenage shyness. I saw a picture of Mark on social media of him with the kids in Machu Picchu. When I looked through the kids' pages, there were hundreds of pictures of amazing places, swimming, flying, and adventures. I wondered if I had prevented him from doing all that before, because now his life didn't seem boring at all. Mark's pages had some terrible photos of rock climbing with faces I vaguely recognized from our wedding day. But worst of all were the pictures from camping trips and barbecues with Jane, Shauna, and Laura and their families. I couldn't make sense of my feelings until I realized it was jealousy, which seemed inexplicable, since I was the one who had given up that kind of life. When I suggested that the kids take a vacation on a yacht, they didn't show much interest. Still, they couldn't find any contact with Samuel. I asked what kind of vacation they liked, and they said it was better with Daddy because he does what he needs to do. I suggested that we go to Disney with them, at least that they took it happily, but I don't think Samuel was very happy about it. Living with someone is very different than dating every once in a while. When the newness wore off, I realized that Samuel is a lot like my ex-husband. He's a sweetheart, but he's no better than Mark. They are both basically good people. Samuel had a hard time adjusting to life with kids and the amount of time it takes. We couldn't just pick up and go on a trip at any moment, leaving them behind. And they were not at all interested in the city trips, elegant restaurants, and hotels that Samuel was used to. He tried hard, but he began to resent having to adjust everything to fit my old life. I missed my girlfriends and family socializing. I missed Mark. I thought of him often, remembering the quiet comfort of each other's company. I missed just having him around. My best friend who always gave great advice and always found a way to make things better. My intuition told me that Mark was the one I truly loved, the man who had guided me through the difficult times in my life. Now times were terrible, but Mark wasn't around to help me. I had thrown him away. The realization was quickly followed by tears. I went to drop the kids off and Laura was there. I was happy to see her, Out of everyone, she was my closest friend, but it had been so long since we had talked. The kids ran inside. Laura said she dropped off the food, and I thanked her for helping Mark with the kids, saying she was a good friend. I joked that he'd always been a terrible cook. We asked each other how we were doing, and politely replied to that. I saw that she hesitated before saying, "I don't know why you did that. I was always protective of you until Mark came along, but together you guys were perfect. Then the kids made you complete, and I was so jealous that you had everything I always dreamed of, and then you threw it away." I could hardly find anything to say. I don't know. I got confused, got sucked into something, and couldn't get out until I realized I was getting too deep. "Well, I hope your loss is to my advantage." "What do you mean?" "I always joked that if I'd seen it before you, I'd have taken it for myself." "Well, I'm serious. We always got along and had fun. He's still in pain, but I'm gonna help him get back." "You mean, you and Mark?" "Sure, if he accepts me. He's so much better than any of my previous boyfriends. You're crazy to kick him out." But you can't. Yeah, I can and I will. We're going camping next weekend. Look, it's better for all of us. We're friends and we can deal with the kids amongst ourselves. It'll be a lot easier than an evil stepmother who'll berate you every chance she gets. I felt tears of frustration and jealousy in my eyes as I watched Laura walk away. Had she really made the first move so quickly? I wiped my eyes and walked into the annex. The kids had scattered to their rooms, no doubt immersed in their phones or laptops. I smiled. Mark was in the kitchen trying to heat up Laura's food. He looked trim, handsome, and utterly bewildered by the microwave. I asked if we could talk. He looked a little puzzled, but nodded toward the table. "Mark, what advice would you give a friend if they made the biggest mistake of their life and didn't see how to fix it?" "It's hard to say without knowing what the mistake is. Isn't it obvious?" He fidgeted awkwardly. I'm sorry about all this. I want to go back." He looked genuinely shocked. "To be honest, Kirsty, you did me a favor. Doing everything for you and our marriage made me lose myself. Right now, I'm enjoying my life, traveling, spending time with my children and friends. I work to provide for our family, and now I've started doing my favorite things, and this is just the beginning. Anything is possible. You said you needed to find yourself. Well, I guess that's what I did. I found something. Maybe myself. But what if you had all that and someone special to share it with? Does Samuel know about your sudden change of heart?" I shook my head. "So you're still hedging your bets. I thought I was too boring for you. Is the excitement with him gone now?" "I never said that, and now you're making fun of it. If there's one thing I regret, it's holding you back and not giving you everything. The passion you have for life shines through. I will beg you if it helps." Mark took a deep breath. "No, it won't. The consequences for the children and for me are too strong. I realized I don't know you and I can never trust you again. For the sake of the kids, we can be civil, but no more." I tried to walk away until the tears turned into a flood. Despite my best efforts, I was upset again back at the apartment. Samuel saw how upset I was and asked what was wrong. All I could say through my tears was, "Mark." If I was expecting comfort, I was sorely mistaken. Samuel was looking right through me. "You still love him, don't you?" I couldn't think of what to say, barely holding back my tears. Samuel took his coat off the rack and quietly left. He came back a few days later, but only to get his things. He never came back again, and I never tried to contact him. Before I had a chance to try to contact Mark again, it became clear that he and Laura were a couple. Every time I dropped the kids off, she was there for me, and I had never seen her happier. Mark looked at her the way he used to look at me. He and the kids hung around her. I couldn't even hate her. She is a wonderful person, and they made a great couple. I tried my best to be happy for them, but I fell back into despair. I felt like Laura was stealing my life. The lease on the apartment expired, and I moved back in with my mom, as far as living in the past was concerned. Meanwhile, my ex-husband was living the life I dreamed of with my best friend, and I was watching it all from the front row. I am alone in this world, and I feel completely lost. That girl's night out, the decision to go on a date, the fact that I was talked into going to the party, the extra drink, the conversation with Samuel, Any one of 100 little decisions could have prevented all of this. I can blame a million decisions, but every one of them was my own. It was my own fault. Mark. So there you go. Betrayed by my wife and expecting the worst, things worked out just fine for me in the end. Why didn't it become the disaster that is written about in literature? Good friends and family who supported me made the difference. I was amazed at how well the kids handled the situation. Hopefully, we instilled good values in them that will help them through life's ups and downs. I was lucky to find Laura, but she insists otherwise, describing us as the crown of her fairy tale. I also found something in myself, a quiet strength, remembered who I was, and it didn't depend on another person's opinion or actions. I also managed not to hate Kirsty, at least not for long. Sure, I didn't like her for a while, but even that feeling passed. Revenge would have hurt me or the kids in the long run. Laura is sure I got the ultimate revenge, a life well lived. The end!